Good morning, all. Thanks for coming. The search for Mercedes Lain, 11-month-old, ended approximately 9 p.m. in a remote, obscure, densely forested area not far from the Stark County, Marshall County line. It was in Stark County. And she was deceased. Before I go into the details that I am allowed to go into, which are going to be rather limited, I'd like to introduce to you Paul Keenan. He's a special agent in charge of the FBI office out of Indianapolis for a few words.
Good morning. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of our partners that we work with in the local law enforcement community here, state police. It was a great partnership. Everyone worked hand in hand, no egos. We knew the most important thing was to try and find the young victim in this case. The FBI stands ready to assist, as we did here. Anytime a child goes missing of tender age, we flew in people from around the country at the request of the local law enforcement here to try and bring this to a resolution as quickly as possible. We thank everybody involved. We're sorry it didn't come to the conclusion that everybody wanted, but it was a strong effort. Everyone involved, including the prosecutors, local and state police. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I am Nelson Chipman. I'm the prosecuting attorney in Marshall County. Some of the agencies, and in my years, I've never seen the depth and breadth of the agencies. Already identified the FBI. That includes Indianapolis field office, but also South Bend and Fort Wayne. There's also the FBI CARD, C-A-R-D, stands for Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team. Department of Natural Resources were involved. Marshall County Police Department, Marshall County Sheriff's Department, of course. It is a Plymouth Police Department case. Indiana State Police. Washington Township Volunteer Fire Department, and that's in Stark County. Marshall County Coroner, obviously our office, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. There's also several task force officers. I don't know how familiar you are with that concept. Several of the larger police departments have the ability to assign officers to federal task forces, and they actually are assigned for lengthy periods of time, sometimes years. And there are officers here from St. Joseph County Police Department, Elkhart Police Department, and Allen County Police Department. Stark County Sheriff's Department and Mishawaka Police Department also gave assistance. Now, when we're going into the case, several of the local media have heard me say many times, at this stage of the proceedings, we are limited by ethics and statute and fairness to emphasize that the people we're about to talk about are presumed innocent, and that these are allegations, and that they are mere allegations that need to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. So at this stage, all we've reached is probable cause, and not yet a conviction. If there's a conviction in the future, I can go into much greater detail. So if there are questions at the end, please realize there's strict limits on what I can say. So this case started, as far as law enforcement, on August 15th, Sunday, August 15, with a 911 call and a dispatch by Plymouth Police to the Economy Inn, north side of Plymouth. Tiffany Coburn she's the mother of Mercedes, and Kenneth Lain, the father of Mercedes, reported that Mercedes was missing. So subsequent investigation revealed that, and all of this is in the probable cause affidavit that has now been recently amended and filed, and that's why I can talk about it, because it's part of the court record. So the subsequent investigation, there was a lot of confusion from those parents once they were located on the timeline of events. But what it appeared to be was that on Friday, August 13, the parents gave Mercedes to Justin Miller for reportedly a few days break from their child. And he did not bring her back. That's what triggered the 911 call. Eventually, a silver alert was activated, and eventually the parents were located because they were not easily found. You'll see that in the probable cause affidavit. On August 16, which would be Monday, at approximately 8:30, Tiffany was finally put in custody, and eventually her husband was also arrested because of what had developed to be a neglect of a dependent case as a level 6. Eventually, Kenneth Lain was located, the father was located at the Red Rock Inn on August 16, the evening hours. Justin Miller was found in Stark County at a residence, and he too was brought into custody and interviewed numerous times. Eventually, yesterday afternoon, after interviewing, after several times of being interviewed, Justin Miller led officers to this location in Stark County. It was secured as a crime scene. We waited for crime scene investigators to arrive and process the scene, and it was several hours before Mercedes' body was removed from the area. As a result, Kenneth Lain is charged with a level 6 neglect of a dependent. Tiffany Coburn, the mother, is charged with a level 6 felony neglect of dependent, and that involves the allegations of giving the child to Justin Miller under the circumstances that the investigation has revealed. Justin Miller has now been charged, or will be charged, the paperwork is being processed as we speak, with an L1, level 1 neglect of a dependent resulting in death. Level 1 is punishable by a maximum of, well, between 20 to 40 years. Level 6s are 1.5 year to 2.5 years. Their initial hearing will be probably tomorrow, and the court will inquire if they are going to retain counsel or have a court-appointed counsel. And certain dates will be set up, pretrial conference, omnibus dates, and status conferences, and we'll see how that progresses. That's all I have to say. Do you have any questions? I do have copies of the affidavit to distribute when we're finished.
Could you tell us, does it appear that the child, do you have a sense for where the child passed away? Obviously, you find him in this wooded area, but when was this death? The best you can determine.
The affidavit talks about Saturday.
autopsy results been included?
No, we're scheduling that. And we are looking for a specialist in forensic, children,
So the-
pediatric.
So the child died on Saturday? That's to your
Well,
knowledge?
I'm just saying that the conversations and the timelines that were provided are so garbled. You will also see that there's evidence of drug use, and so
Those crimes are the drug, is that something that you might look at charging them for as well, drug crimes?
that'd be the least of their worries.
Okay.
Does it appear that the child was deposited in that location on Saturday?
Oh, yeah, yes, yes.
Do you believe that the baby was killed there and then brought to this location, or?
I can't go into that.
Do you have an idea of how she died? I mean, why is this a neglect of a dependent resulting in death versus a murder charge or something?
We're still, we haven't even had an autopsy yet, so.
What was
To answer your question is, that's the first answer is autopsy.
Do you have any initial indication, just based on?
Actually, she was wrapped in, well, it's not in the affidavit, I can't go into it, so,
She was wrapped in something, so?
yeah.
Can we get more of a specific location? You said wooded area, I believe? Stark
Yeah,
County?
it's 1025 east, 50 north in Stark County. In fact, the road signs are just like that, right there.
Is there any
But it's
significance?
inside,
Any significance to that
Woods.
location that you know of? or-
not that I'm aware of, it's not mentioned at all.
So out of all that garbled information, what finally kind of said this was the accurate information that got you to this location?
I didn't understand.
You said there was just a lot of garbled information, misinformation.
The affidavit talks about Justin Miller led the officers there.
I mean, how did he get this sudden sense of clarity, I guess, to finally cough it up?
That's a legitimate question.
Let me ask you this, is your sense that on Sunday when they were reported missing, that the parents knew what the outcome was, or they truly did not know what had happened to their child at that point?
No, I don't think there's no proof, evidence whatsoever that they knew the ultimate outcome here.
Was this an accident or was a child intentionally killed?
We're not to that point. It's not in the affidavit. I can't talk about anything that's not court record.
How's the family doing? You've spoken to the aunts and the grandmother.
They're very upset. They were notified. We had a press conference 2 days ago, the Plymouth Police Department with the grandmother and an aunt. They were upset then, of course, and I know that they were notified last night.
You said initial court hearings are set for tomorrow, right?
Pardon me?
Initial court hearings set for tomorrow?
I believe so. I can't vouch for it, but I would think it would be cranking up.
Do you anticipate amending the charges after that?
No, I have no evidence to suggest amending anything quite yet. The evidence is still coming in. Like I said, the autopsy hadn't even been scheduled.
That's why I was asking if there would be amendments later.
Well, it depends on the evidence.
Did Mr. Miller admit to killing the baby or just depositing the body?
It's not in the affidavit about any
But he
admissions.
admitted to depositing the body.
He led them there.
Okay. But he didn't admit to actually leaving the baby there. He just led them to the crime scene, right?
He led them there.
Okay.
Said there.
And in the affidavit we got yesterday, it had said that the parents had been uncooperative in finding their child. I believe that's a direct quote. Why? Can you explain why that was in there? I mean, how have they been uncooperative?
Well, you can see from the sequence of events that there was a 911 call, and then they couldn't be found.
Yeah.
And it took some effort to find them.
It also talked about Mr. Miller saying he went to a friend's home in Coons Lake, but possibly went to his girlfriend's house in Mishawaka. Were you able to verify where exactly he was during this time?
Yes.
Okay. And where was that?
Both places. I mean, he
He was in both
traveled, he
places.
traveled. yeah.
Okay.
So he's indicating that he is using drugs and high at various times during these periods of time between Saturday and Wednesday?
There's not a lot of that in the affidavit, but there is evidence to suggest that.
He admitted to using synthetic marijuana, though, correct?
That was in the original, yeah.
Okay. And the parents were using methamphetamine?
That was in the original affidavit, yes.
When were Mercedes' family notified all this?
As far as the discovery?
Yeah.
10 p.m., 10, 11?
Can you describe the level of frustration that I see a lot of your officers back here who put in a lot of time, you put in some time on this, with the outcome, just from the law enforcement perspective, how difficult cases like this can be when you have a young child involved?
Well, absolutely. Almost all of us I can see are parents, and the common thread that people have with 11-month-old. Everybody wanted to find this Mercedes alive and healthy. So there's, in the same vein, these guys make a living from seeing some of this, and we wanted it to turn out differently. It didn't.
Does the fact that Mr. Lain has a previous charge of neglect of a dependent from 6 years ago, would that cause him to be charged additionally, or that to be an elevated charge or anything like that?
It wouldn't off the cuff right now.
Okay.
It could have other ramifications later on.
Mr. Lain previously admitted to trading a minor for drugs. Is there anything in the affidavit about that?
No.
This time around?
No. No, the affidavit describes a situation of some parents that gave the child to Mr. Miller, and they talked about taking a break. So there's no evidence of any selling or anything. But
In the affidavit, Mr. Miller, I believe, told police that he left the baby with a woman at the motel. So did that turn out not to be true, or is that something you're still looking at?
no, we're not looking at that.
Okay. So that turned out to be false information?
Just logically, yes, it was false.
The affidavit mentions that Mr. Miller was a family friend of the Lanes. Are you able to elaborate any more on the relationship they had, how they knew each other, how long they knew each other?
I cannot elaborate on that. Not that there's anything that I see of significance right now, but I don't know to the extent, but they did know each other, certainly. There was some mention that they might have been related. Related.
Are they related? Is that confirmed? or-
No,
Okay.
And he was related to who, possibly? I know.
Tiffany and Kevin. To Kevin. Lain.
You mentioned several different agencies that were involved. Is there a total number of law enforcement officials that worked on this?
Wow. That would be a good answer. Anybody have any idea? If I described it to somebody about when we had briefings back there, I'd say there's 30 people or more. More? 40? And there's some, the resources, and if we can change tracks for a second, the resources that came to bear to go all over the 3-county area, St. Joe, Marshall, and Stark, is actually absolutely astonishing. There's no way a police department like the size of Plymouth, 24 officers, could do any, to send out two-person teams to interview literally dozens of people and gather video from doorbells, for goodness sake, and security cameras from neighbors. But for the notion that we should defund police, this is an example of where that is so wrong and misguided. If anything, we need this help, this bolstering of assets.
Are there any other suspects still looking at, interested in?
No.
Could you confirm the location one more time of where she was found?
1025 East Division, did you say?
No, 1025 East and 50 North, Stark County. Stark County has a road system that would put you, last night it didn't help me, but I got there. And actually that is the very intersection that the woods are, and
How far back into the woods was she?
I do not know that when it was taped off, and nobody was going to go back except the CSI guys for hours. For hours.
And there was no real I mean, when he finally led the officers to this location, he was able to very directly go there, or was he wandering around trying to figure it out again?
I have no indication either way. But my sense is that it was a direct tape, you
I
know.
mean, how far back, I mean, this was not just right off the side of the road, I mean, was it?
Right, you can't see you could probably get there now, but you can't see the location
There wasn't a
from the
house or
road.
anything around there?
Because
It was all forest?
It's densely forested. The property owner is maybe 100, 200 yards north.
When you spoke with that property owner, did they report seeing anything strange over the weekend, or did they talk, I mean, were they able to?
Not in the affidavit. And that's safe to say.
Chief Bacon, if I could ask you, just because you were the original, sort of what this process has been like, especially as far as the community reaction and community outpouring and stuff on this case. If you could just sort of speak to that possibly a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, so we can hear you.
The community's been very helpful, which is what we look for. We need that cooperation to get information from them. We've had that, the outpouring of support, trying to find Mercedes. The outside agencies have been tremendous. I can't say enough about what they've done. My employees, my officers, my lead detective, Ben McIntyre, he started, so his normal shift's supposed to start normally Monday morning at 7 a.m. and he was in at, I believe, 3:30 or 4. And basically, up until now, he's gone home to sleep for a short time. Other than that, he's been working. My other detective is about equivalent to that, a couple of crime scene people, and we're a small agencies. And so the help that we received, it's been outstanding. We appreciate everybody's patience, appreciate the patience of the press. I realize you probably were not getting as much as you wanted. My email would say that, but I appreciate what you guys do, but you have to also realize, like Mr. Chipman was saying, there's only so much we can release, and we were releasing what we could, and unfortunately we got to the point that we were at with the outcome.
Can you tell me how how disappointing, I guess, this is, or how your officers took this news? I mean, realizing that, their efforts over the past sort of days were, not for nothing, but just sort of
Right.
unsuccessful.
Yeah. Obviously, as Mr. Chipman stated, the officers have children. When you're dealing with a child, it's obviously different. Anybody that has a child, there's that special love. And so you never want to see this happen.
Can you talk about also just what you guys have been, we've obviously have seen, you talk about sort of what has been going on behind the scenes over the past couple of days. he said you were going out and talking to witnesses. I mean, can you sort of explain what you guys were doing over these past several days to work on this?
Right. Like you said, there's been teams going out. Monday, we started going out to different locations that we knew that he may have traveled. Since that point, they've done new locations and rehashed old locations. Teams of officers put together. We had the command post that would kind of lead the charge on all that as far as putting out assignments. And I've been in law enforcement for a long time. I've never seen anything like it as far as the help that all the agencies working together. It's been outstanding. We just didn't get to the end result, but
Mr. Chipman, if I could just ask you specifically about the drugs. I mean, how big of a factor do you think that played into what happened?
You know, I really want to go into that. I really do. But it's going to be a later time. We just finished a murder trial where methamphetamine was the central driver. But it's going to be another time.
Well, is there any, in Justin Miller's record, is there a criminal record, and does it involve anything with crimes against children?
The ethical standards that I mentioned that we are limited to, particularly at this stage of the proceedings, specifically prohibits me in talking about prior records.
And just to confirm, there's no indication that the parents played any direct role in the baby's death?
The charges speak for themselves. L6, level 6, as opposed to level 1. And that's just where we are right now. With that, if there's nothing more, we appreciate all your interest and your help in letting the public know this tragedy.
Is there copies of the probable cause at all?
Yes. So we'll end it then. And I'll ask, could you hand these out?